So mindset, what does that actually mean? What do you mean by mindset?
Yeah, so mindset is how you think, how you manage your emotions, and it's your ability to manage stress, your ability to problem solve, and it's basically the ability to tap into the best skills and abilities within yourself. So I categorize things as we want to have clear goals. Um, and then after that, we want to know, okay, how are we going to achieve those goals, as an example? But the mindset is always, how do we do it with confidence? That confidence is a mindset, positivity is a mindset, your ability to be resilient is a mindset. So it's always, how are you thinking? How are you managing your emotions? So my skill is being able to identify, these are the thought patterns, the emotions, the patterns on the inside of you that are holding you back, and how do we change that to be more confident or whatever else it may be.
So I know it feels like it would be what you would think is that if you've got a positive mindset, you're much more likely to achieve your goal. But has that been actually proven?
So it's interesting, right? So positivity, it depends on what people call positivity, because a lot of people will call positivity just pretending that everything's okay. And I don't think that's real positivity. So positivity, when you really look at people who are positive and how it works, positivity is when things go wrong, positive people will believe there's a solution and they'll look for a solution. So it's not ignoring the problems, it's just believing that they can overcome the problems. Positivity is when you get knocked down or you have a failure or a setback. Positivity is that ability to bring yourself back up again and then have another shot. So positivity is actually way more strategic than most people think. Sometimes people think that if I'm positive, I'm just going to believe it's going to happen. They just think that it's going to happen just because they have, some sort of positive idea. But positive thinking is really strategic and it's focusing on your strengths. And that form of positivity is definitely beneficial.
Okay. And so how would you go about if you were working with someone and they were struggling with their mindset? What would you do with that person to help them change?
Yeah. So initially, it's you need to have that awareness of what your mindset is doing. So, like a really nerdy fact on the brain, you have between 70,000 to 90,000 thoughts every single day. So that's a new thought around every 1.2 seconds. So your brain is operating like a computer. And even though you might have one web page open, your computer's doing all this other stuff in the background. So your brain's very similar. So those 70,000 to 90,000 thoughts, they're happening in the background. And most of the time, people aren't aware of what's going on. So the first phase is we always go, okay, what is your goal? And your goals in life are really useful because they expose your mindset blocks. When you're trying to achieve something new or something hard, it brings up your fears. It brings up your stresses. It shows you what you're not good at and what you're not capable of. So from there, we can start to identify, okay, that stress that you have, or that fear that you have, or that imposter syndrome that you have, what are the background thoughts that are creating that? And then it's pretty simple once we can dig into it. What's the self talk? What's the story? What kind of pictures are going through your mind? Are you imagining worst case scenarios? Do you see yourself a certain way? And then we can break down, what are these 70,000 to 90,000 thoughts that are going through your mind on a daily basis? And then we can just basically retrain them. So your brain's like a muscle, and we can just retrain your brain to have automatic positive thoughts, automatic confident thoughts, automatic motivated thoughts, and things like that.
So can you give me like an example of one of the tips you would give someone to try and have more positive thoughts?
Yeah. So let's say someone comes in, and let's say we'll try and make it relevant for your audience. Let's say that someone's coming in and they're saying that their goal is to like become the healthiest version of themselves. They want to be the healthiest version. That's the goal. Then they know what to do. So they have strategies and they know how often to exercise, how they're doing their self care. But then their mindset might be that they have a lot of negativity in their head. So they doubt themselves, they beat themselves up, and they have a lot of negativity towards themselves, or they just feel guilty for spending time on themselves instead of doing more work, doing things for the family, and then putting themselves first makes them feel guilty. So all of those negativities, one of the things I'd start to identify is, what is the story in your head? So we always have this self-talk going through our mind, and it's like an ongoing commentary of our life. And we call that the story. So people, when they think about going to the gym, they might have a bad story. Oh, people are going to look at me. they're fitter than me. People are going to be staring. I feel like this. I feel like that. I look like that. I don't look good enough to go there. That kind of negative story makes you want to avoid the gym. Or if it comes to your self care, you'll feel guilty for maybe prioritizing yourself versus doing work or doing something else. And that would, again, be a story or a narrative in your head. So we will talk about how do we first identify the narrative, the story in your head, and then what do we want the story to be instead. So when you think about the gym, we want to train your brain to be thinking, this is my time to make myself stronger, make myself feel better. This is the time when I'm doing self-care or time on my business. This is not guilty time. This is time where I'm actually giving to me or building something for my family's future. But it's really about identifying what's that story, and then replacing it with something more empowering.
Yeah, one of the frequent stories that I get is people who, again, are coming to me for help, and they want to feel well, look better, look after their health. They want to probably lose some weight. But the story is that they've failed in the past. So, like, I've
Mm,
already done this before, I've tried before, like, I know what I'm
yeah,
supposed to do, but I just don't seem to be able to do it. And I think there's such a great seated sense of shame that somehow they haven't been able to do it, and therefore they've already failed, and that therefore they're a failure. And we're just caught
yeah.
in that kind of mindset of, how do we break this cycle of, well, if you've already got that thought in your mind that you're going to fail, we're probably setting ourselves up for potentially another failure.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. Your mindset is everything, because if you got to remember, if people are aware that's their negative story, you got 90,000 thoughts a day. So even when you're not consciously aware of that, that's still the narrative in the back of your mind. And if everyone's had those days where they wake up in the morning and they don't know why, they just feel crummy. They just feel tired. They feel negative. They feel stressed, and there's nothing happening. But that's usually a result of there's been so much negativity in the back of their mind that now it's kind of manifested in their emotions. And then you're trying to do the right actions, but you feel crummy because you've been thinking crummy. And that's the big thing. Mindset is really the driver behind what you do and what you don't do.
And so if we've got someone and we feel like maybe their mindset's okay, or, we're in a
Yep.
reasonable good space from that perspective, but we're trying to set some goals. One of the things that even personally I find really hard, am I better breaking down my goal to small steps that seem achievable, or am I better giving myself like a really big goal to push myself? Or am I best having a combination of both? Like, in your experience, what's the best way to work towards goals?
Yeah, I've been setting goals since I was literally 11 years old, because I wanted to be that pro basketball player. So it was always, so I've done so much stuff on goal setting, and there's a lot of good things out there, and there's also a lot of bad things out there. So what I find is the combination is really important, but it's how you use a combination. So you want to have a big goal, because the benefits of having a big goal for your health or for your life is it makes it so the strategy on how to get there is really, really clear. So if you have a big goal for your health, you know that your strategy to get there, it can't include chocolate every night, because you just won't achieve a big goal. So the big goal helps you refine your strategy. So that's where you start. But once you have your big goal, then it has to become the small goals and the milestone. And that's where you need to be focusing. Because if you focus only on the big goal, you'll develop what I call the happy wins, because the goal seems so far away. And even though every day you're trying hard, you're being consistent, you're being diligent, you're saying no to the right things, yes to the right things, the goal can be so big that you feel like, man, I've been at it for so long and I'm still so far away. That's really deflating. So the big goal helps you have your good strategy, and then the smaller goals give you something tangible that you can reach for, something that's achievable. And in that way, you get celebration along the way versus feelings of, man, I've been at this for 6 months and I'm still so far away.
Yeah, my goodness me, you definitely hit a bit of a nerve with me there when you talked about the happy when. I know that both my husband and I have been guilty of that. So I remember when we were
Yeah.
younger, we were going to be happy when we're happy when we finished all our GP exams and we don't have to study anymore, or we'll be happy when the renovation's done in the house and everything's done, or we'll be happy when the kids are sleeping through the night, etc.,
Yeah.
etc. And I think, look, we can't be alone in that. A lot of people are really stuck in that happy when. And so how would you work with that?
Yeah, well, the first thing is most people who have the happy wins, they're typically people with high levels of potential. So that's a good thing, because if someone's listening to this podcast, they're obviously trying to better themselves. So that's the first thing, which is good. But there is a big trap there with high performers or high achievers or people who like really want to achieve something or have a good life. They do fall into that pattern. So the main thing is again, it comes down to that story. No one is going to maximize their performance or their consistency or their motivation if they have the happy wins. Because in order to do anything well and to do it consistently, you need to have an air of positivity. Most people, they think about their health habits and it's like a lot of negativity involved. Whereas when it comes to things they're already consistent with, like maybe watching Netflix or something like that, all those actions that they don't procrastinate on, they have so much positivity associated. So we want to have the mind where you really learn to enjoy the journey and you celebrate the wins pretty much every single day. So one of the things I get my clients to do, and it's a non-negotiable, is at the end of every day, they have to write out or they have to tell someone like their partner or their kids what their 3 wins are for the day. Because what that makes you do is it makes you stop and reflect going, what did go well today? Well, I did this exercise, or I did this, or I ate well, or I just did this work here, or I had this good moment. And it forces you to stop and reflect it. And with people who, most people who, as I said, are like that, full of potential people, they really amplify when they miss the mark. But then when they do something well, they go, oh, yeah, that was good. Then they just move on. And they haven't stopped and smelt the roses, haven't celebrated it. I've got a friend of mine who he is like a wine connoisseur, and I like wine, but I'm not that, that into it. But if I was to go out with him and have a wine with him, he would be utterly disgusted if he gave me a really expensive wine and I'd have shot it down and move on. He would yell at me because I didn't savor it, I didn't smell it, I didn't enjoy the moment. And that's kind of what people are like when it comes to the wins in life. They go, oh, yeah, cool, that's nice. And then they shot it down and they just move on. Whereas what you need to do is every night have that process or that routine of going, hey, this was good today. We can celebrate that. We can feel good about it. And no one really wants to do that. But once they see the benefits of it, it is life changing, because every single night you're reinforcing good behavior. Like a child, if you catch them doing the right thing and give them a pat on the back and highlight it, there's all this positive emotion associated on doing the right thing. So every single night you're celebrating your wins, and subconsciously you're training your brain that, hey, if we exercise, if we eat right, if we self-care, if we stretch, if we do the right things, there's positivity in it for odds. So that's a huge, huge technique. It's so simple, but it has a lot of benefit.
I will tell you something funny. I was driving home from Newcastle last night, so about a 90-minute drive, and I had my daughter and 3 of her ballet friends in the car, and we were listening to, well, I was listening to one of your podcasts, so all these prospective ballerinas were all listening, and it was really interesting, because we talked a little bit about exactly this, about how we're all very good at striving for something or aiming for something, but then when we get it, we kind of belittle it a little bit. So we'll say, oh, but and we were saying my daughter's, she's achieved some pretty cool things, but when she does, she always says, oh, that was nothing, or they probably only picked me because of X, Y, or Z. It's like always like putting the achievement down. And so why do people do that?
The thing I believe it to be, right? Like everyone has a self-image, and this is like this is a really deep question, so it deserves a deep answer. But everyone has a self-image. They see themselves a certain way, and if your self-image doesn't really line up with the achievement, your brain will try and justify that to yourself. So you might be a high performer, but if you don't see yourself as a high performer, or if you see yourself as someone not good enough or not worthy enough, then the only way your brain can justify such a good result or a good compliment is they must be lying. So you're trying to twist the evidence to fit in with how you see yourself. And that's what imposter syndrome is. It's I'm getting results or feedback in life that is better than how I really see myself. And that is probably the root issue, And I see people with imposter syndrome, they have a win and that's their first response. They must just be saying that for whatever reason. But really the issue is you probably don't see yourself as that level. And the shame is people usually get their how they see themselves, their self-image, based on things of the past. But people focus more on the negative than the positive. So something bad will happen to them. Someone treats them poorly, and then they'll remember that more than they'll remember someone treating them really well. So because of that bad event, they start to see themselves in line with negativity. You talked about before. People will focus the story on how they failed in the past. So now they'll see themselves as someone who can't do that. I'm not the kind of person who can be that consistent. I'm not a healthy person. I'm an unhealthy person. I'm an overweight person. So then when they start doing the actions or getting the results of a healthy person, it creates inner conflict. It's not how we see ourselves. We try to justify it. We try to sabotage ourselves. Things then go wrong. And then we go, oh, see, I knew it wasn't going to work. And then the brain goes, oh, cool, there's no more inner conflict, no more inner wrestling. It's all again. So, yeah, I think it's a self-image issue and how you see yourself problem.
Is imposter syndrome something that is split equally in the sexes, or are women or men more likely to have it, do you think?
I think it's more of a personality type more than anything else because it's funny, like the people who you wouldn't like, the people who should have imposter syndrome never have imposter syndrome. The people who are arrogant jerks and they're not good at their job, but they think they're fantastic at it, they're the ones who should have imposters and they never have it. It's always the people who are either really empathetic or it's the people who have a really big potential or a really big goal. They're the ones who seem to have imposter syndrome. And I feel like it's more of that high achiever or that person who really, for whatever natural reason, their personality, they want to get the most out of life. They don't want to just have a family. They want to have a great, enjoyable family. They don't want to just have work. They want to enjoy their work. They don't want to just, do exercise. They want to have great health. And I find for whatever reason, it's the personality type who have that big vision, that big goal for their life. They're the ones that usually fall prey to it more than anyone else.
And it's definitely a term that people are talking about a lot more. You see magazine articles about it and people talking about it on social media. And so
Yeah.
if you, I mean, I feel like I can relate to having imposter syndrome massively, but what can you do about it?
Yeah, there's many things, right? There's limiting beliefs, so you have to shift your limiting beliefs. Obviously, we talked about the celebration thing as well, but the big needle mover out of all of it is you really need to get clear on your self image. So how do you see yourself? How do you label yourself? So if you go through and kind of analyze your self talk, analyze, like who do you see yourself as? I've got clients and they can be multi-millionaires, but they still see themselves as just a mum. I've worked with a lady before and we took I was helping the mindset. She was already smart in business. She went from $1 million and now she's going up to 10 million. And she was going through these massive goals and achieving heaps. But initially when she was struggling, her mindset was, I'm just a mum. I'm like, but you're a mum, yes, but you're also a really successful, inspirational businesswoman. So the labels you give yourself are really important. The exercise I give clients, it's kind of in depth, but the basis of it is we want to begin to get really clear on what I call our avatar. What is the best version of you? What is that person like? What are their mindsets like? How do they handle challenges? And I get my clients to begin to visualize who they want to be and how they want to be. And we want to begin to train the mind instead of seeing yourself based on your failures, seeing yourself based on just one label, begin to see the best version of yourself and train your mind to see that's who you are. You know what I mean? And that's the big key there. So it's a lot of visualizing how you want to be, mapping out how do you handle challenges, what's your attitude like, what are you capable of, what strengths, all that kind of stuff. But it's definitely around the self-image will kill the imposter syndrome.
Are you struggling to navigate the perimenopause or curious to learn more about the menopause from some of the top experts in this space? I am so excited to tell you about an upcoming event, She Thrives, an evening in conversation with myself, Dr. Kelly Casperson, who joined me in episode 89 for a brilliant chat about sex during midlife, and Dr. Vonda Wright, who was on episode 54, who shared how to conquer midlife and beyond with strength training and nutrition. Join us on Monday the 3rd of March at Newcastle City Hall from 7 p.m. A percentage of every ticket purchased will also be donated to the Debbie Gaunt Foundation, which supports women's mental health during these transitional years. To book your spot, click the link in the show notes. I can't wait to see you there. This is one you're not going to want to miss.
This podcast and any information, advice, opinions, or statements within it do not constitute medical, healthcare, or other professional advice. Information is provided for educational and entertainment purposes only. If you have any health concerns, always consult your doctor.